If you've seen any of our many PC reviews recently, then you may have noticed that this PC is the one that I keep saying is my favorite. And because of all the requests and comments that I've been getting for it, I can tell you're pretty interested in it too. And today we're going to help you decide if it's actually worth it in this 100% honest and unbiased review of the Corsair Vengeance i8200. This configuration that we have here for you is maxed out with an i9-14900K CPU and 4090 GPU, the most powerful GPU in the world right now. I'm going to quickly take you through the unboxing and what's included, gaming and creator benchmarks, design and build quality, the internals, thermals, fan noise, overall ease of use, pricing breakdowns and comparing its price to performance ratios against the competition, as well as my overall likes and dislikes. If you decide against this PC after anything that I say in this video, just keep watching because I'm also going to be sharing with you some alternative PCs that I recommend for every budget. I'll have links down below in the comments and description for all the computers that I mentioned. I guarantee that by the end of this video, you will know if this PC is right for you or not. But if you still have any questions after watching this entire video, just shoot me a comment, and if you're publicly subscribed, I guarantee a personal response. All right, now let's rewind back into the past real quick and check out what came in the box. Upon opening the box, we're met with your typical obvious instructions. And then down here on the side, we've got a small box with a very beefy power cable capable of some serious wattage, 2 antennas for Wi-Fi, warranty guide, and an oh so kind thank you card for joining the Corsair family. One of my favorite parts about this computer and its previous version, the i8100, is that design. It's a gamer's dream when it comes to looks. We've got 6 individually controllable strips of LED along the edges and peeking through these futuristic sci-fi looking vent holes. At 10 inches wide, 20.5 inches deep, 22 inches tall, and 47.7 pounds, it's definitely one of the beefier cases that I've reviewed. This PC is built with Corsair's 5000T case, which is designed to make things quick and easy to access. It's actually got a door that you can just easily pop open to access the internals without any screws. Inside, you can see that they've included Corsair's new IQ Link fans that can connect to each other in a way that eliminates the need for each fan to be wired to the motherboard individually. We've got 7 IQ Link fans total in this case. These 3 at the top are actually part of our all-in-one liquid cooling system. For those of you new to my reviews, this is the most important heat removal part of this PC. This CPU cooling block right here uses a liquid to transfer heat from the CPU up through these tubes into this 360mm radiator at the top, where these top 3 fans quickly blow that heat out of the case. To the right of our CPU, we've got our Corsair Dominator Titanium RGB DDR5 RAM, and when you enable XMP in the BIOS like we did, you can push them to insane speeds of 6600 megahertz. We've got 2 sticks of 32 gigabytes for a total of 64. Way more than you would ever need for gaming, but it could come in pretty handy for 4K editing or motion graphics work. Below the CPU and behind this metal heatsink is one of our included SSDs. In this build, they give you 2 MP600 Core XTs with 2 terabytes each, so 4 total. These came in at about 5 gigabytes per second read and about 4.3 write. I really wish we could have been closer to the almost 7 gigabytes per second read that I've seen on some of the other pre-builds, considering how expensive this one is. The most important part of this PC though, and the most expensive part, that GPU. This massive one right here is the all-new PNY GeForce RTX 4090 GPU. It absolutely dwarfs my FE 4080, which is actually the same size as an FE 4090. That one's a bit thicker than this PNY though. Honestly, this PNY GPU is just a little bland and boxy for my taste. This second i8200 that Corsair sent me came with a GameRock 4090 GPU. I'm going to reveal why we actually had to send our first one back here in a sec. Then swinging around to the back and opening the back panel just like the front. You can see all of our cable management, 3 bays for 2.5-inch SATA SSDs. On the bottom left, you can kind of see where you have 2 more bays for 3.5-inch mechanical hard drives. It is a little annoying that you have to remove this huge metal bracket just to access that. It just makes it more time consuming to add more drives with that and all the cables that are zip tied to it. And then lastly, in the bottom right, our modular Corsair 1000E 80+ gold power supply. For the ports on the top, we've got a power button, 4 USB-A's, 1 USB-C, a headphone and microphone combo jack, and a restart button. On the back, an HDMI and display port, a PS2 for older keyboards and mice, 7 USB ports, a 2.5G Ethernet port, 1 more USB-C, a microphone, line out, and line in. It is a little disappointing that a computer that's this high-end does not have a center speaker, side speaker, or subwoofer audio output back here. Many of the top-tier pre-builts that I've reviewed have had 6 audio outputs on the back here. Then moving below that, we've got 2 connectors for your Wi-Fi antennas, and on the back of our 4090 GPU, 1 HDMI, and 3 display ports. Now for the software, the main included program that you'll be using is the iQ app. In here, you've got an insane amount of customizations and animations for your RGB. There is some cool animations to choose from, but also a lot of not so cool, weird looking animations. Not really a fan of all these fancy mural effects. They all just look kind of weird on the PC if you ask me. Rainbow Wave or just the standard Corsair Blue look the best to me. I do love though that every inch of this PC's RGB is completely customizable. From the fans to the CPU cooler, the RAM, and now these fancy LED strips. iQ is also really great for revealing PC information like temperatures and speeds for your CPU, GPU, and fans. This time warp effect is actually a pretty cool new feature with these iQ Link RGB fans. It basically strobes the LEDs at the same rate that the fans are spinning so that you could essentially control what they appear to be doing. You can make them appear to be moving slowly, moving backwards, or make them look like they're moving slowly clockwise or slowly counterclockwise. That is a pretty cool illusion if you ask me. You've also got cooling controls with several different fan profiles depending on if you prefer quiet fans and a hotter PC or louder fans with an extra cool PC when you're doing some high intensive gaming. And then within the BIOS, you can see that there's a lot more that you can fine tune even further, like boosting your RAM with an XMP profile or even overclocking settings if you're one of the more advanced users. Now when it came to the fan noise, these are my results after testing each of the main fan profiles. In quiet mode, it was just a little over 40.8 decibels. And then when moving up to the extreme performance fan profile, it brought the fan noise up to about 47.5 decibels. I was kind of surprised that it tested that loud because the frequency and pitch of the fans really wasn't that bad compared to how annoying some of the others have been. You can see that technically this was one of the loudest when playing games in the extreme fan profile, but one of the quietest when the fans were in quiet mode. Now for the thermals, you can see in our thermal imaging time-lapse from computer off to full-on gaming that just like most gaming PCs, heat does start to build up against the glass right next to the GPU. And opening up the glass panel reveals in detail a little bit more what's happening here as the 4090 GPU does generate quite a bit of heat. Most of that heat successfully escaped out the back and top exhaust fans though. The majority of my testing was spent in actual gameplay though. These were our CPU temps for several different games at 1080p. Pretty good overall, definitely way cooler than the new Corsair One that I just reviewed with similar specs. And averaging all 1080p gaming temps together on over 30 of the latest PCs that we've reviewed gives us an even better overall perspective on how it stacks up against the competition. This reveals it to be one of the coolest i9s that we've ever seen in a top tier pre-built. Then moving up to our average 4K gaming temperature tests, I organized this chart by the GPU because high resolution gaming puts a lot more pressure on the GPU. And here you can see that we've got the second coolest 4090 GPU that we've ever seen in a pre-built PC. Second only to that very expensive Origin PC Genesis that we reviewed with a water-cooled 4090. This is impressive, but the reason for this might bring your excitement down just a tad, which leads us to the performance and gaming benchmarks. And up next, the most important part of this review, the price to performance ratios. For Cinebench R23, which simulates its 3D rendering power, we got a multi-core score of 35,169 and a single core score of 2,328. By the way, pretty much all rendering software can utilize multiple cores, so that's the most important score. And you can see here that it's actually a little below average for this CPU-based rendering test. Another very helpful test for you 3D renderers is the V-Ray benchmark. And these were our CUDA, RTX, and overall V-Ray performance scores. You can see that for the GPU scores, it did very well, coming in 3rd overall compared to the other pre-builts with similar specs. This is an important score if you're doing a lot of high polygon 3D modeling or real-time viewport rendering and lighting. The overall V-Ray performance score, though, is a CPU-based rendering test that demonstrates how well a PC can handle the more advanced realistic rendering that takes a lot longer to calculate. And this score showed this PC to perform about average here compared to the others. All the scores in the top 10 here were so close to each other that you creatives out there won't really notice a difference when it comes to full-on 3D rendering. And the last set of benchmarks for creatives before we get into gaming are the Puget Benchmarks. For DaVinci Resolve, we got 3,513. If you're an editor, this should really excite you because it's one of the best that we've ever seen. Adobe Premiere, 15,396. Again in the top 3 here. Unfortunately, this chart here is a smaller comparison as Puget just recently changed how their tests work. This chart shows the last 8 reviews since that change. Same thing with Photoshop, but most of these scores are so close to each other that I'd say you wouldn't really notice much of a difference if that's the only program you're using. For 3D Mark, which is a great benchmark used to determine a computer's overall gameability, we plugged in these overall graphic and CPU scores into our master chart, and here you can see that it did do well, but the i7-500 and even the smaller Corsair One did do a little bit better. And obviously the very expensive Origin PC Genesis did well too. But honestly, actual gaming benchmarks are probably what you guys care the most about though. These were our average FPS results that we got for several different games at their highest preset settings at 1080p. Pretty impressive here, but surprisingly not as good as the Corsair One. Then averaging all gaming FPS together, this sums it up where it stands amongst all the other recent PCs that we reviewed. And here you can see that it's 2nd place overall. Things got pretty interesting jumping up in resolution though. At 1440p, it actually slid underneath the i7-500, and even more of a drop in 4K. With a bigger case, superior cooling, and faster RAM, it did not make sense why 1440p and 4K gaming had slightly inferior FPS results compared to the Corsair Vengeance i7-500 and the smaller and hotter Corsair One. I wanted to make sure that this was not a fluke, so I sent it back to Corsair and got a new one, and the results weren't any better. Comparing it to the others, the culprit seems to be that the GPU is not pushing as many watts, which technically can be compensated for by overclocking the GPU, but that wouldn't really be fair because I don't ever do that for the other pre-builts. Judging by how incredible the GPU temperatures were, you do have some headroom to do that before you'll see any thermal throttling. Factoring in the price to performance might pull you back a little bit as well. This version of this PC with the IQ fans is going to run you $4,600. Personally, if I were you, I'd get the i8100. It's actually still available at Best Buy for $200 less. The tiny difference in FPS between the i8100 and the i8200 is not even going to be noticeable. And this price to performance chart confirms that PC to be an even better bang for your buck. And the i7-500, which has been the most popular, has an even better dollar per FPS ratio than that. Not as much storage and upgradability as the i8200 and i8100 though. Same thing at 1440p. This i8200 actually the 2nd worst price to performance ratio out of all the gaming PCs that I've tested. At 4K, it's not as overpriced in comparison to the others, but still a little bit more than I think it should be for how well it performed. Now, if you're understandably at an entirely different price point, these are my recommendations for every budget. Remember, I'll include links down below for all the computers that I mentioned. If you need to be under $4,000, then the Corsair Vengeance i7-500 is what I would get. It's also the one that the majority of you end up going with. For a budget closer to $3,000, at just over $3,300, the Alienware Aurora R16 is actually a pretty good deal. I would only get this one if and only if you don't plan to be doing any upgrades to next-gen components. Proprietary Alienware PCs are only really for those that find modding their PC to be a chore and typically toss their PCs for a brand new one every few years. And if you need to be under $3,000, then I would go with this i7-480 version of the CyberPower PC Gamer Supreme for just over $2,600. And if that's too much for those of you with a budget under $2,000, then that Skytech Azure 2 with a 4070 Ti that I reviewed is what I recommend. And for $1,000, this exact version of the HP Omen 25L that I reviewed with a 4060 and Ryzen 7 with 16 gigabytes of RAM. If you're coming from a console like an Xbox Series X or a PS5 and you want your graphics to at least match that, then you'll need a PC with at least a 3060 or in this case, a 4060 GPU. And if you're okay with a PC that just gets you by with very low graphic settings, then I would get this exact version of the Victus by HP 15L for about $650. Overall, I did expect it to perform better than the Corsair Vengeance i7-500 and especially the Corsair One, but unfortunately after testing 2 of these and getting the same results, that's just not the case. A little bit disappointed it wasn't the absolute best. It's not a huge deal though, as you do have more headroom to safely overclock your your GPU because of those low GPU temperatures. Quite a bit more included storage and storage upgradability in this case, and in my personal opinion, a much more appealing design. Now, if you do decide to purchase this PC or any of the others that I mentioned, then please remember to use my affiliate links in the comments and description below, as I get a small commission at no cost to you for every single purchase made. And it's actually a major factor in keeping this channel going and getting better and better for you. I've also upgraded to Genius links, so each link below provides you with all the major outlets to purchase each PC so that you can compare each one for the best pricing. I'd also like to personally thank all of my members for their monthly support of this channel. Also, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with notifications turned on to stay up to date with all of my latest tech and gaming PCs. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you guys. God bless.